Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian Farmer, Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Thursday, March 20th. So this will be a real quick video because I have an appointment that I've got to run to after the close. But looking at the averages today, where did we start for the day? We started down. We bounced back a little bit. So there was a bit more. There was a bit of selling at the top of the range and of where we've recently been, and then there was a little bit of fight back in the last hour. So it seems so. What does all this mean? It seems like there's a bit of indecision in the marketplace. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through, by the way, is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only. So here's what I'm referring to. I'll start with the kind of the short-term view in SPY really quickly. Let's see this 1 second. All right. So what I'm referring to is this is where we were in the beginning of the week. This was on Monday. I remember going back. I feel it's so funny when you have to go back a few days, you kind of forget. But remember Friday, Monday, we have this really strong breath where a lot more advancers. Friday was over 90% up volume day. Monday was close to that. And, it looked like, hey, we had a nice move. You kind of rewind and go to Tuesday where we sold off big on in the first hour of the day, didn't do much thereafter. Yesterday we had a nice rally day until like the last hour of the day where we kind of stalled. And where did we stall yesterday? Right at those highs for the week. Then you kind of move to moving to what we saw today because we saw a nice rebound from the lows today. Support held where it needed to. This is just the S&P 1 hour chart, by the way, with this week's value area, and we stalled again. So we came back. Again, we're holding in here in terms of support, but it's a tough market to really try to like position for momentum. This is more of a scalping type market and less swing trading because we are right now. And what I find funny about this is, if you go back to prior to February 14th, the middle of February, remember we were just trading in a range. We were going back and forth, back and forth. So it's a little bit of that deja vu all over again. Sorry, but it's almost baseball season. So there you go. Old Yogi Berra saying, but it feels like we're just chopping around a range again. And, we will break this range. I mean, this is a very short-term range after a big drop. So the question is, are we going to start moving back higher? Or are we going to continue to break down? And I don't have the answer to that question. And I'm just waiting for like basically a break. And then I'm also just noticing too, like, what has trouble with taking, what's been a little bit more challenging versus what's worked a little bit better. Also, what names are closer to breaking out? And for what I see, like, and I've been talking a lot about that this week. And that's just basically, I see a lot of just value type groups. Again, it's not all value per se. It's not like consumer staples. And by the way, the other thing is the 200-day moving average is also what we're running into. When you do zoom out and look at the daily chart, you could see that thick black line in there, which is a very important. The reason why I have that labeled that way, a darker line so that you can see it on the chart, is because it's an important line. It's the 200-day moving average. So that's also for now capping us. So no breakdown, no break higher, range bound market. And for now, I'm trying to stick with what's working well. I've talked a lot about, I think I talked about this in yesterday's video. Here's the XLE chart, which I still think is sideways, but Chevron is starting to get more attention. I heard it mentioned on CNBC earlier. So for now, like this is where I've gravitated towards too, is just energy plays. I wrote about, this was a trade idea in Substack earlier in the week. So again, this was going to be more of like a short-term trend trade, a short-term swing trade. But I looked at the weekly chart and I really like it. So I like this here, and it's a possible breakout in the mix here for Chevron. Also, what I like is I was looking for another trade in energy, and I found Cheniere as just a chart setup. Why do I like Cheniere Energy? Is because it's trying to break this range as well. So that's what I'm finding here. Meta had a nice day. Like, so in the beginning of the day, the Mag 7 names had a pretty nice day, but look at how it ended. And this was a name that we talked about in the room. And, we detailed for this where there was resistance, and it rallied right into resistance. So it does help to have the market webs and understand volume at price and understand where there's resistance, because this thing was, again, this is what this market's giving you: really good scalp opportunities to both go long and then to fade versus resistance, because that's all this stock did today. It gave you 2 hours of really strong strength, and that's it. And more or less that's what we're seeing. Like, I'm using Meta because it's just an example of this market right now. So if that's the case where a lot of stocks are doing this, my thought is, hey, if it's a nice day by you, go out for a walk, get some exercise in, go for a run, go to the gym. We got March Madness on, go watch a little bit of March Madness. Some maybe the basketball games will be a little bit better, because we will, what you want to do in this type of market. Like, if this scalping type activity is not for you, and it may be for you, I know a lot of good scalpers, but if it's not for you, then the best thing that you could do is just kind of wait it out and be patient with this market activity, and go from there. So I'm not going to go too much more into in charts today, other than I'll bring up the Qs for you as well. And it's the same thing with the Qs, but a little bit more, I would say, relative weakness versus the S&P, because here was the high of this week, which was also on Monday. We got here yesterday at 3 o'clock, and we're showing a little bit of lower highs here. All right, so that's the story there. And IWM, also, which was showing a little bit of relative strength, because it did get through those highs from earlier in the week, but it seems like it's kind of stalled in here. So that wouldn't be surprise me. And I would also watch. What I find is, even though I'm not really trading IWM, I find it kind of interesting that we've got a little bit of a decision here too, because we're just above the 5 period moving average, but IWM rallied right into resistance there at the 50-day, excuse me, at the 20-day moving average. So this is going to also break one way or another. My guess is that this would start to head and trickle back lower, but we'll see what the price. I'm not going to make a prediction here. Let's see what the price action tells us tomorrow. Have a great night. Reminder: tomorrow is quadruple witching. You're going to see plenty of volume on the close tomorrow. You also the index rebalancing for the S&P and Nasdaq, where they reshuffle all of those indices. That's why there will be heavy volume on the close, in addition to options expiration. But all the S&P indices rebalance. So things like XRT, things like XBI, things like XHB, all of those, as well as the S&P, right? Remember, it's not just about the one add and the one delete, or the couple that they're doing. They're reweighting all their indices back to benchmark weights. So if something is equally weighted, it goes back to equal weight. If it's market cap weighted, it goes back to market cap weighted. And then you'll have a lot of volume on the open as well tomorrow, because that's what's known as MOO, market on open. And that's where all futures expire on the open. And there will be baskets of stocks offsetting those futures positions. I know this because I used to work on a Delta One trading desk, institutional trading desk, and that's what we used to do. So there'll be billions of dollars being put on the open. So when you see a whole bunch of volume on the open and you're like, geez, what's all this volume in Apple? It's all related to the open, and the volume will dissipate thereafter. Guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.